from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you on this Thursday evening. Again, if you want to join us, here's the number you can give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And Donald Trump had a press conference today, which is a lot more than you can say about his rival, Que Mala Eres, because she hasn't had any press conferences, right? She hasn't taken any questions. She hasn't done any in-depth one-on-one interviews. She's legit doing the Biden strategy, and by her account, that works. So Trump decided to hit her hard today. He hit her on a number of things, and we're going to get into that. I also want to talk a little bit about the record that we been examining of Governor Tim Walz. We're going to be doing a little bit more of that, a little deeper dive on that in a little bit. And well, there's plenty. Before I get into all that, let me just stick with the Trump right here, because Trump had a lot to say. And he opened up with this.
We have somebody that hasn't received one vote for president, and she's running, and that's fine with me. But we were given Joe Biden, and now we're given somebody else. And I think, frankly, I'd rather be running against somebody else. But that was their choice. They decided to do that because Kamala's record is horrible. She's a radical left person at a level that nobody's seen. She picked a radical left man that is, he's got things done that he has positions that are just not, it's not even possible to believe that they exist. He's going for things that nobody's ever even heard of. Heavy into the transgender world, heavy into lots of different worlds having to do with safety. He doesn't want to have borders. He doesn't want to have walls. He doesn't want to have any form of safety for our country. He doesn't mind people coming in from prisons, and neither does she, I guess, because she's not, she couldn't care less. She's the border czar.
Again, that's El Trompito firing back at Que Mala Eres and Governor Tim Walz. Now, what's interesting about all of this stuff is that the media is largely driving this. And I have to say, I've seen this for years. And right, those of you who've listened to me for longer than I've been on at night, and who used to listen to me in New York or listen to the podcast, you know that I've been railing against the media as long as I've done this. And so has most of conservative talk radio, right? I think El Rushbo goes back to 1988 or 89 with his show. And that was his whole angle, the drive-by media. He was always talking about that because that is the reality. And as much as we hear it and as much as we talk about it, I have to say, it still becomes more and more evident as time goes by what influence they have. And I don't just mean the news channels. I'm talking about the entire media package, from the programming that they offer musically to everywhere else. And it's really quite remarkable how you can really steer a culture, a cultural shift, a cultural movement by having so much control. And again, I guess I'm amazed by that because I thought I was raised and grew up in a country that was not authoritarian, that was not a communist regime, right? I thought we have freedom of the press, freedom of speech. And look, we do. However, the powers that be, right, the people with the money, they do things. Like even this radio, right? This particular network that I'm on, Westwood One Radio Network, Cumulus Media, they have not succumbed to the influences of George Soros and the funds that he invests in that are looking to do as many hostile takeovers of conservative talk radio as they can. But he's done some on some big networks with lots of radio stations. And some of them are music stations. Some of them are conservative talk stations. Some of them were Spanish conservative talk stations. And again, that's old news. But I bring it up to say the media has a lot of power. So when, for example, Matt Drudge, right? Matt Drudge worked with Ariana Huffington from the Huffington Post. And he's had this blog for years, a news aggregator. I remember at one point it was like one of the most visited websites ever. And yesterday was really comical. I should have taken a screenshot or seen it. But it was like one crazy headline or suggestion after the next. But I'm going to read you a few right now just to let you know how this comes across to somebody who's just looking to check the news. These headlines are not headlines. They're straight up hit pieces in each headline. Harris crowds royal MAGA. Trump losing Miami? That's just the top two. Yesterday they had the Donald, something like the Donald now shaking in his boots, changing his strategy. And he addressed that today, that he wasn't changing his strategy. And before we get into that, I want you to hear him talking about not changing his strategy. And on top of that, I want you to listen to this one clip I have before we hit the break of the media and how they push even sometimes not an idea, not a thought, a simple word. But first, listen to Trump addressing his strategy.
I haven't recalibrated strategy at all. It's the same policies, open borders, weak on crime. I think she's worse than Biden because he got forced into the position. She was there long before. She destroyed San Francisco. She destroyed California as the AG. But as the DA, she destroyed San Francisco. A friend of mine, Bob Tisch, all know the Tisch family. He was in many cities with companies. He said the greatest city in the country is San Francisco. That was about 20 years ago. And he passed away a while ago, and he would be looking down and said, what happened? He thought it was the best city in the country. He had divisions there, lows. And he would be looking down in horror now when he sees she destroyed no cash bail, weak on crime. She's terrible.
Absolutely terrible. And that's right. And this is the message right here. It's the one I've been talking about here, that it doesn't matter if she's Indian. It doesn't matter if she's black. It doesn't matter. A lot of the things that we're looking at, right? His military record, these things matter, but these are character issues, and that's fine. You want to talk to those. But you really want to talk to the issues. And the issues have not changed. She is Joe Biden. Period. She is Joe Biden. She's the Harris from the Biden-Harris administration. She's been there step by step. There was no distance made. There was never any public spat. There was never any, look, I have differences with the president on this. No. It was, we did it, Joe. We did it. That's it, right? He enthusiastically endorsed her with seemingly figuratively with a gun to his head. Barack Obama, same thing, right? Everybody's on board. So everybody thinks everything is okay. You need to let them own that. They need to own the fact that the economy is not great, even if they lie to you and tell you that it's great. Even if they tell you that this is the most joyous ticket that they've ever seen, filled with joy, filled with happiness, the most exciting ticket we've ever seen. And that's why they went up there and they had that, quote, weird moment where she was just like saying, good morning, right? It was good morning, good evening, whatever she was saying. And he just kept waving in some weird way, like, this big open palm wave that nobody knew who he was waving to. And they just kept laughing and laughing, almost as if they were on nitrous oxide. Do you remember that a couple of nights ago? I do. It was very interesting. And bottom line here, because they wanted to send this message to create a stark comparison. And when they send the message, I don't know who the they is. I don't know who's in charge of communications for an entire movement of people. I really don't. But they do such a good job. They got the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, on there. They've got the members of the media on there. They've got members of Congress out there that are doing surrogate work on the news programs. You name it. Everybody went last week when they said, let's call these guys weird. we're going to say they're weird. J.D. Vance is weird. It was everywhere. Weird, 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 right? You heard the clips. Today, it's joy. Kamala and Walz are full of joy. Check this out.
Thank you for bringing back the joy. She does it all with a sense of joy. Compassionate, careful, joyous leader.
And yesterday, what you saw is joy.
And it was the power of joy.
You know what I love more than anything? The joy. You can't underestimate the power of joy in this campaign. Don't underestimate the joy factor of this. They're going to bring the joy.
People were also just feeling relieved and telling me about how happy they were to see some joy back in the party.
And what we saw last night was this joy, this positivity. You have this happy, joyful, positive ticket.
The most remarkable demonstration of support, enthusiasm, joy.
This idea of joy.
Joy.
Being joyful is part of the American identity.
There is joy in the future. There is joy in having your boss be a black woman. There is joy in what is coming.
What we're hearing from this vice president, future president, is a message of freedom and joy.
I just love that we have this new joy.
You could see it just so filled with the joy of the work.
The fact that we saw that exuberance last night, that joy.
One is hope and joy, and the other is fear and anger.
Oh, you could really see joy and exuberance versus grievance and retribution.
People are tired of fear and anger, and so they're going to give to them the hope and the joy.
Hope and joy, 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 joy. Hope and change. Remember that? Hope and change was a big deal back in 2008, and it worked for him. Anyway, so the media is complicit in this, as you know. They're all in on this together, but they're doing an excellent job with their messaging. The message, remember, we know about Tim Walz as of, was that Monday morning? Was it Monday or was it Tuesday? Monday, right? So we're Tuesday. So we're 2.5, 3 days in, and we're already pushing joy, right? The joy ticket, the joy team. I'm very impressed with their ability to crank these things out at this level because they realize, look, it's not about a campaign slogan. It's not about anything other. One word, we're joy. They're bad. We're Orange Man bad. We're joy. People are simpler than you think. And we have to watch out for how the media operates. Right? There's a recording that's out there of the Biden-Harris team revealing how they targeted, and manipulated voters and information. We're going to get into that. And you've got the Biden campaign saying that all the stories on his age that the conservative media were reporting, that was all misinformation. So I want to talk about the media, and we're going to get into the whole Google thing a little bit later, because like I said, when I talk about the media, it's not just the Taylor Swift concerts and their endorsements. It's not just the talk radio and the cable news, but it's really this larger ecosystem that controls even the words that come out of these people's mouths. And it really is quite remarkable. So, folks, stick around. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, folks, welcome back. Rich Valdez here with you live till 1 a.m. Eastern time. And I left off with explaining that there was this audio that just came out. It's been around, right? It's been around since 2020. But somebody discovered it and realized how juicy it was and how they are claiming that it is misinformation or disinformation to say that Biden's age was a big deal. Meanwhile, this seems to be something that continued up until 2024, clearly. But Becca Rinkovich is the rapid response director for Biden's campaign. And back then, she was explaining to those that were on this Zoom call that they published that the people they targeted were targeted based on their online behavior. Listen to this.
We targeted folks based on online behavioral cues, building out personas based on the type of content they were consuming, what they were searching, the kinds of websites they were visiting, so that we could target folks in real time as they were exposed to that disinformation.
Interesting. So if you come across a website that may lean conservative and it's talking about, questions about Biden's age, they were immediately going after those users that consumed that content so that they could go ahead and clean up in aisle 5. This guy read the New York Post article about Biden's age. Fascinating, right? I'm not sure everybody knows how this works. And I'm sure this is happening equally on every side of the aisle. But interesting to see how targeting has developed over the years. Now, she went on to talk about how they were targeting them specifically if they talked about mental decline and to call it disinformation. But I'm going to stick with this part right here because we've heard so much about Google and the antitrust case that they just lost and all of this, you type Donald Trump assassination and it brings you to a Kamala campaign type of thing. And obviously that's disconcerting for most people that care about fairness. But I think there's a good amount of people that don't care about fairness. And that's lamentable, but that's where we are. So I want to dig into this a little bit because I think the media is really out of control. But who understands that better than those that research the media daily? And that's the MRC Media Research Center. Dan Schneider is vice president over there, and he's with us now. Dan Schneider, welcome back, sir.
Rich, I feel like we are living in that movie from about 10 years ago, The Hunger Games, and we're in District 12, and we're being told that it's wonderful that these terrible things are happening to us, and we just have to smile and take it. But things are actually much worse than even the latest reports about this brain mapping, brain manipulation. The Democrat Party and their allies have perfected ways to not only to micro-target us and not only to find narratives that convince us, but actually to manipulate the way our whole brains work. Wow. This is what's not yet been reported on, but the science is out there. Duke University professors have explained it. It's a really scary place we're in. This is essentially taking choices out of the hands of many voters and being manipulated by media, big tech, to vote for the people they want us to vote for.
Yeah, kind of like telling people that this ticket's full of joy and the other one's anger and fear. I mean, it really is remarkable the way they do this. And Dan Schneider, I want to dig into that because I have a couple of follow-up questions specifically about this research that you've read from Duke and how they do this brain mapping stuff, because I'm fascinated by it. I think it's interesting. I used to be a marketing guy and years ago, and I thought things were pretty cool when they entered the digital space. But it's really, it's kind of like that on steroids today. Let me remind everybody who we're on with. We're on with Dan Schneider. He's VP at the MRC, the Media Research Center. And Dan Schneider, in the 40 seconds we have before the music kicks in, my thought is do you think that the Trump campaign, the Republicans, and lovers of liberty are aware of what's going on and they're using the same technology, or are we being left in the dust?
Hardly anybody on our side of the aisle understands what's going on, and even fewer know how to do it. We are so outgunned in this space, but we do have right on our side.
All right, well, let's dig into that when we come back. Folks, we're coming right back with Dan Schneider. He's a really, really smart guy. He knows what he's talking about, and he's with us when we come back. Dan Schneider from the MRC. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
We saw a huge amount of volume and a lot of impact on narratives like Joe Biden was being manipulated by the radical left and disinformation around his mental acuity.
That, again, is Becca Rinkovich. She is the rapid response director for the Biden campaign, saying that this was clearly disinformation, all the talk about Biden's mental decline. And what I find interesting here is, again, politics is politics. And of course, you're going to say that. That's kind of what they do. But interesting of how they were targeting people and kind of going after them just because of their search history. Folks, we're back with Dan Schneider, VP at the MRC, the Media Research Center. And Dan Schneider, before we took the pause, you said something that I thought was really impressive. And that was two things, really. A, these people are doing some crazy brain mapping that we haven't seen before. So they figured it out. They've cracked the code. And B, folks on our side of the aisle have not yet cracked this code. Tell us more.
Yeah. So on the first part, this technology is actually about 3 to 5 years old now. So it's not like it's brand new, but it's being applied in pretty scary ways. So, for example, Facebook Meta has goggles that you can wear to play games, and Meta is able to actually track eye flutter movements, and during gaming periods, they can flash up numbers, and the subconscious mind responds to those numbers, and Meta is now able to actually figure out people's PIN codes and passwords to their bank accounts. Meta is actually able to crack into these things by monitoring eye flutter and similarly tracking heart rates and kind of like a lie detector test, those sort of machines, how people respond and how they emote and how their chemicals change can help these platforms figure out what kind of messages people are susceptible to. And this is the key word. Susceptible. We are the victims. We are susceptible to different weaknesses, the way we emote, the way our bodies respond. And so it's not merely, the left is spinning. Instead, the left is figuring out how they can manipulate the way we think and respond. So some people respond to fear the way the left wants. Others do not respond to fear. They respond to different pleasure impulses. And the left is then able to create messages that address our psyches, our subconscious, and manipulate them the way we behave and the way we vote.
Wow. And what's interesting here is none of it had to do with policy, right? None of it had to do with what's right or wrong. It's all about how you feel, how you think. I'm in your head, and I'm going to work it that way. And it's remarkable. I'm not going to steal your thunder because I don't know much about it, but I read an article not too long ago, and in Yahoo Tech, and I just want to read you the headline because I found this interesting. Apple reportedly filed a patent for its AirPods to feature electrodes that detect brain electrical activity. And as you're telling me this, that's what reminded me of it. I was pulling it up while you said it because they did this last July, and it was reported just about 3 months ago. And I was thinking, why on earth would they want to know my brain activity so I could hear my music or talk on the phone? But clearly, just like the cookies on your computer or your cell phone, the more they know about you, the more they can sell, the more they control.
Right. If you're wearing those devices, and the folks at Apple with their artificial intelligence, it's not like they've got somebody with earphones in listening to you. Instead, it's all being recorded and mapped and analyzed in real time with massive machines and artificial intelligence. But they can tell based on your brain waves, literally with the AirPods in your ears, mapping your brain waves and figuring out how you respond to different messages. And it could be as simple as the kind of dog you want to buy at the pet store, or the kind of Monopoly game that you prefer, the one in English or the one in French, whatever. But based on how your brain waves change based on different messaging, they can then figure out how to influence the way you're going to behave. And again, I keep on saying this because we've got an election coming up, and this is supposed to be our sacred right, and we've got a country where we're supposed to be governing ourselves and a democratic system where the majority is supposed to have a say, the primary say in how things are going to operate within our constitutional system. But instead, people, innocent bystanders, are being victimized and are going to be induced on how the left wants us to vote.
As you're saying that, it sounds so sinister and so advanced and so cunning. But in reality, I feel like it's just modern day focus groups without your consent, right? They're conducting massive focus groups on people without telling them.
Yeah, you buy those AirPods and you try to put them in your ears, and you discover that you gotta check off that box. You scroll through the pages and pages and pages
the
of
terms and conditions,
disclosures, and you have no idea what's there. You just check off the box so that you can move forward. Well, you've just tacitly given approval to everything they're going to do, and what are we supposed to do about it? Are we supposed to just pack up our bags and head to the woods and pray for the end of times? No, we have a responsibility as U.S. citizens to take back our Constitution and our constitutional rights and fight back against these guys who are trying to destroy the very system of government that our founders created for us to protect the liberty that God has given us.
Dan Schneider, I agree with you. I just feel like they're dabbling in a new wave of campaigning, and I don't know that they're going to stop. What do you think happens? What is in store for the future? I think the Trump campaign has been very cutting edge since day one with a lot of this stuff, whether it's online fundraising or even messaging and the use of their surrogates and whatnot. Do you think they catch up, and will the rest of the Republicans do it?
Well, look, I am one of the biggest critics of Ronna McDaniel. What she did at the RNC was just horrendous. She put us years behind schedule in just the most basics of campaign activity, the most basic fundamental activities that the Republican Party had pretty much perfected by the year 2000. And the Republican Party is worse off now than it was in 2000. So just doing simple get out the vote and the statute is called the Help America Vote Act, HAVA, that prevents illegal voting. We're still trying to catch up to where we were in 2008 when we were doing HAVA work. 2004, frankly, 2004. And so the idea of trying to catch up to the left in 3 months' time on this very sophisticated stuff, it's not going to happen. But we're going to have to convince voters that it's policy that matters. It's the future of our country that matters. It's not whether, Aunt Kamala and Grandpa, Waltz are, fun people and you want to,
joyous,
take you out for a picnic, and have joy. It's about the future of our country and what is at stake and whether freedom is still worth fighting for and preserving. Americans are going to have to focus on that and get beyond, the silly person. I'm about to say silly, but it's an effective campaign strategy if we can't defeat it.
Yeah, well put. Dan Schneider's VP at the MRC, the Media Research Center. And Dan Schneider, when we come back, I want to get your take, both, I guess, the legal perspective, because you're a lawyer, but also the media perspective on the Google antitrust case and how that looks moving forward, being that they've kind of been put on blast by everybody. There's videos all over the place of the censorship in action. Folks, stick around. We're coming right back with Dan Schneider.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You may be wondering why I'm up here telling you this. I'm no politician, and I don't want to be. But I do care about the truth. And the truth is that the media has lied to us about Donald Trump.
That's Amber Rose at the RNC not too long ago. And she's right. The media has been lying about a lot of things, and we're finding out that it's not just the media, or I guess we're finding out how big the media really is and how far its tentacles go, including Google. And it's not just Google. I mean, there's a lot here, right? There's a lot to unpack here. Hopefully I can get into all of this. But Dan Schneider, we recently saw that there was this antitrust case, and they said, you can't do this. Did they go as far as saying we're going to bust you up? No, not yet, as some are saying, not yet. But some people think that might be in the future. What's your take on this whole Google antitrust case?
Well, Rich, I, as a classical liberal, sort of that traditional conservative that very much believes in limited government, when it comes to antitrust policy, I'm what you call Borkian. I think that our antitrust law should be applied very sparingly, not just simply because an entity is big, but because they engage in consumer harm. And as I look at Google, Google doesn't charge you by the dollar, they charge you by the data. And if you apply Borkian economics to what Google is doing, even a skeptic like me, skeptical of the use of government and the use of statutory Sherman Antitrust Act, I say Google has to come down. It is in clear violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act, Section 1 and 2 of the Sherman Antitrust Act. This is one place where the Biden Justice Department and I are on the same side, along with 38 state attorneys general. Google has been abusing its power, not simply because it's big, not simply to make more money, but it has been abusing its power, harming consumers, exploiting them in monopolistic ways to extract from us more value than a free market system would otherwise provide. So it is time for Google to suffer the consequences under these anti-competitive practices with application. So the judge in the Google case has determined that Google is not merely a monopolist, but also behaving monopolistically, and that is illegal. So now we're going to go to phase 2. On September 4th, we're heading to the remedy phase. What is going to happen to Google? And it could be a very aggressive sanction. It could be something mild or something in between. Rich, I'll tell you, I kind of think that the Justice Department, this is the Biden-Harris Justice Department, I think they're sending a message to Google right now. You better behave because the remedy phase is coming soon. The remedy phase is coming right before this election. We already know that Google swayed 8 to 9 million votes the last presidential election cycle, and I suspect Google knows it better do even more for the Harris-Walz ticket or else.
And that's really an interesting thing. And again, I'm a skeptic, so I rely on folks like you to help bring me back to earth. And I tend to look and I say, why do I agree with the Biden DOJ on this? Because it's a clear example of they did the wrong thing, so they went after them. But another part of me, the skeptical political side of me, says, you're right, they're telling them to behave, but it's not behave or we're going to throw the book at you. It's behave or we'll throw the book at you if you don't do what we need you to do. And it seems like Google's doing exactly that by burying results for Trump and boosting results for Harris.
That's exactly right, Rich. Google has been doing exactly that, making it very difficult to find information out about Trump. You try to find something about Trump, and you're given glossy stories about Harris. And this is not hypothetical. We know that the Biden White House and the Biden administration has been putting leverage on these big tech platforms to censor and control. That's what the whole Murphy v. Biden, the Murphy v. Missouri case was all about. It went to the Supreme Court. There was, countless examples of this Biden administration using its power to censor political rivals.
And that's horrible, right? I mean, this is literally third world behavior. And I feel shocked by it. But, again, the skeptical side of me steps back and says, is this how it's always been and we just didn't know because we didn't know? Because I started to see a lot of this. I worked in state government in New Jersey for a bit, and it was eye-opening for me when I realized how much power the state level of the deep state had, the administrative state, the career employees that weren't appointed, that weren't, they were going to be there no matter who was governor and no matter who was working there. They just were a part of it. And I was really just taken aback, like, wow, this thing operates as it's a whole, not just a fiefdom, it's a whole other world. And Washington's that on steroids.
Yeah, Rich, we've certainly seen government applying pressure to news outlets, news organizations, to alter news. The difference is that when, Lyndon Baines Johnson applied pressure to, say, the New York Times about a story, that had a short-lived impact. But when you're applying this kind of pressure to social media, the impact goes on and on and on. It builds on itself. We all know that, a social media post has more than just the life of 10 seconds. It goes on and on. And the entire scheme, the censorship scheme that this Biden administration put on, covering 16 different federal agencies, including the White House itself, demanding that messages it didn't like be taken down in the name of misinformation and disinformation. And of course, they've never actually defined those terms in any way other than stuff we don't like, stuff we disagree with.
Yeah. Dan Schneider, stick with me if you can. I want to get a final word from you and make sure everybody knows how to find you. Folks, we're on with Dan Schneider from the MRC, and hopefully he can stick with us. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I've done some stuff personally in the past. I'm not planning on doing that this time. And that includes, not endorsing either of the candidates. Now, look, there's obviously a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. The historic events over over the weekend. And, on a personal note, it's, seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life. But look, it's, and I think, look, at some level as an American, it's like hard to not get kind of emotional about that spirit and that fight. And I think that's why a lot of people like the guy.
That is Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook saying that El Trumpito is a badass, and he's going to be refraining from the endorsements, and I take that to be his involvement like he was involved last time. And Dan Schneider, I don't know if you believe him or take him at his word, but in the minute and a half or 2 minutes we have remaining, how do you react to what Zuckerberg said? And make sure you tell us how we can find you.
Well, I think Mark Zuckerberg really is more sincere than most of these other big tech platform CEOs in wanting his platform to be used, by everybody. Obviously, he's not as effective as Musk. He's nowhere near as terrible as the Google people, YouTube, Instagram. Well, I guess Instagram is part of his. But Zuckerberg is to the right of his employees. Now, he's left of center, but his employees are radicals. And I really do think he's trying to be decent. But you can always find us at the Media Research Center. The great Brent Bozell is our founder and still president. I can be found at Twitter at Schneider_DC. And you can always read our stuff at mrcfreespeechamerica.org.
mrcfreespeechamerica.org. Dan Schneider, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being here tonight, brother. Godspeed.
Hey, thanks, Rich.
You bet. All right, folks, that wraps up hour number one. Hour number two is coming up right now. Don't go too far. We're coming back. We've got conversation on walls and so much more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of our program. We're live, we're national, and if you want to join the late night national conversation here, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And President Trump has agreed to debates with Fox News on September 4th, with ABC News on September 10th, and with NBC News on September 25th. The Trump-Vance campaign has also agreed to a vice presidential debate with CBS. So, Que Mala Eres is about to be put to the test. She's going to have to square off with El Trompito 3 times. That's not including the one he already did on CNN with Joe El Baboso Biden. So stay tuned for that stuff. That's some pretty big stuff, I think, that's happening. Let's see what else we've got here. We've got some body cam footage that revealed what was going on with the cops at the shooting, the assassination attempt of President Trump. I watched it earlier. Pretty eye-opening. I'm going to try and do a deep dive on that tomorrow in the 10 o'clock hour. So stay tuned for that. And what else did I want to talk about? There's a couple of other things here. Trump had a big press conference today. I played you some of that. I'll play a little bit more of it later. But what I want to talk about here is this vice presidential nominee that they've put forward for the Democrats, Governor Tim Walz. Now, he's been getting a lot of heat, right? He's been taking a lot of heat from a lot of different sources because of his military record in particular. Now, I played some audio yesterday of his colleagues, right? People that worked with him in the National Guard, saying that he pretty much abandoned his guys and decided to run for governor. But there's more. I mean, J.D. Vance called him out, and we played the full length of that, but I have a short clip of that. Listen to this.
What bothers me about Tim Walz is the stolen valor garbage. Do not pretend to be something that you're not. And if he wants to criticize me for getting an Ivy League education, I'm proud of the fact that my mamaw supported me, that I was able to make something of myself. I'd be ashamed if I was him and I lied about my military service.
Yeah, and he should be. And you know, some in the media are actually doing their job, right? Tom Foreman from CNN, he called out Walz yesterday saying that, how could he say he carried weapons of war if he hadn't seen war? Listen to this one.
This notion about the claim about being in actual combat, that's different. Walz did make a comment, speaking to a group, he's done it a couple of times, where he has used language that has suggested that he carried weapons in a fighting situation. As you know, with your contact with the military, I know from coming from a military family, there is a difference between being in a combat area, being involved at a time of war, and actually being in a position where people are shooting at you. There is no evidence that at any time Governor Walz was in a position of being shot at, and some of his language could easily be seen to suggest that he was. So that is absolutely false when he said that about gun rights out there.
Again, that's CNN calling him out. You know you're doing pretty bad when CNN is calling you out. So good for Tom Foreman for keeping it real, keeping it gangster, and telling the truth right there. And I want to get some more truth-telling here, and I want to go to somebody who was not being Tim Walz, and that's Adam Schwarze. He's a retired Navy SEAL based in Minnesota. He spent more than 20 years in the Navy as a SEAL, a former infantry Marine who's deployed 9 times. And he's served in over 90 countries around the world. Adam Schwarze, welcome to the program.
Mr. Mulder, thanks for having me on tonight.
Oh, please call me Rich. Thank you, and thank you for your service. So let's.
I gotta say, Rich, you have an epic opener. I love the opener of your show, man.
Well, let me tell the truth here. Thank you for that. The opener, the whole script of that. This show is older than I am. And Larry King had this show 45 years ago, and that's actually the opening to his show. They just swapped out
That's amazing.
my name and put some stuff in there. And we did that kind of as an homage to, a little hat tip to Larry King.
Respect.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
I love the segue to the nice modern music to you. It's awesome. It's a good handout.
Yeah, right. Because my show always had like some hip hop music, and we wanted to keep it with the original theme of some pipes and keep it kind of classy for late night radio.
Love it.
So thank you for that, brother. I appreciate it. Put a lot of work into that, believe it or not. I know
it's
I don't really
great.
hear the compliment too often.
I know you didn't have me on to talk about your awesome opener, but it was great. I do a lot of these, so I was like, wow, this was great.
Oh, well, I really do appreciate it. I really do. And a lot of people worked on it. So, Adam Schwarze, let's dig into this. You've had this storied career and, the stuff that, people only see in the movies most of the time. And you're in Minnesota, and your governor is now running for vice president, and he's getting his rear end handed to him all over the place for saying things he shouldn't say. And it's not like you don't know that, right? I mean, I think a command master sergeant, somebody who was at one point a sergeant major, should know how to word these things. But it seems like he's not acting as a soldier. He's acting as a politician.
I mean, I think you said it right in the head. That's the bottom line up front, right? He was a National Guard reservist. He was, I'm not disparaging the National Guard, but it's just different than being a full-time infantry, Marine, or Navy SEAL. And everybody has their roles in the battlefield. I'm not disparaging anybody who serves in the military, as far as I'm concerned, has my respect. But he's a politician first, right? And so some of his statements, I'm sure he wishes he could take those back now, because in the modern age, everything's recorded, and people are taking him to task. Although I have to admit, I think that the people who are taking him to task are people that are wearing, the conservative, the red jersey. I happen to be one of those weird patriots that, I guess I weirdly love America, if that's a thing. But I don't think that these ad hominem attacks are going to gain us any traction, frankly.
I'm with you. The election isn't going to be about his military service or whether Kamala Harris is Indian or not. I agree with that 100%. But I do think this is interesting because this offends a lot of people, right, that could be voting. And every election always comes down to the mail-in votes have always been the faithful men and women in the military. And this is, I think it's a big deal, right? It's a very big deal. I could just tell you, I saw some guy get the crap beat out of him. And I was like, man, what did he do? And they saw me looking, and the guy looked at me, and he was a Marine. And he was beating up a guy wearing an Army shirt. And he looked at me and he said, "Stolen valor." And I was like, oh, shoot. Okay, my bad. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I was just going to the auto zone.
Richard, speaking of my point, brother, how many Marines do you think are going to vote blue? I mean, truly, How many combat veteran Marines are going to that side to begin with? There's nobody who's actually been in a real gunfight that I know who has put their life on the line for the greatest nation in the planet that would vote that way, because we see what failed policies look like all around the world. I mean, you talked about my bio. I've been all around the world. I know what good government and leadership looks like. Tim Walz has never represented that. His political, these attacks on him, being over his skis, making these false claims, it's not surprising. What I'm way more concerned about is that 3.5 years ago, Minnesota was $18.5 billion in the black. Now we're $2 billion in the red. That's a $20 billion swing in 4 years. That is what should have people lose their mind. But we're not talking about that.
No wonder Kamala picked him. He's of her ilk.
I mean, brother, speak my language, man. I mean, we're going down the same track as Governor Newsom in California. There's $65 billion in the red, and that's what I try to get to when I travel and have these conversations. Is I take the quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. So certainly it's newsworthy. We got to talk about Walz and all his stolen valor. It's a thing. It's a fact. But what we really should be doing is talking about the events, because that's where the majority of the level-headed people, we can hopefully pull some people onto our team, I guess. But really, sir, what I think that, especially with, somebody who's obviously very well-spoken, articulate like you, I want to talk about the ideas, because that is the true difference of where we separate ourselves from the other team. And that where you could take out all the candidates, Trump, Walz, Biden, Harris, and then we can talk about what we really stand for. And then we figure out where we stand and how our government should be led. And in my experience, sir, only one side has proven capable to lead on the national stage, and it's not the Biden team.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that one, brother. Absolutely. And I really think, and Trump said it today, and I'm glad he said it because, Trump is one of those guys. He has a good time with a lot of things, right? He likes to poke fun. He likes to do, and we all love it, I think. But I think ultimately, people can get caught up in that, right? And I had people calling here, and they're like, "But she's not Jamaican." And I was like, "I don't care. I don't care. I don't care who's twerking with Kamala Harris. I don't care who's Jamaican and who's Indian. I care about inflation. I care about the border.
I don't care that she was Montel Williams' side chick at one point. It's funny. Right. It's newsworthy for a second, but that's not what we should waste our time having a real conversation about.
Right, because ultimately, I think this election is won and lost. This particular election, I think, will be won and lost on the economy. And we should never lose sight of that. The fact that there's all this glitz and glamour and this stolen valor, hero, non-hero, Joe Biden wannabe, in my opinion, it's all fake, phony fraud. The real deal is what you're talking about, how he's running Minnesota into the ground. Trump put out a great tweet or post on Truth Social saying, Tim Walz let Minnesota burn. Kamala Harris bailed out the people that lit the matches. I thought that was brilliant.
That is great. That is great. I guess, sir, I would respectfully disagree just slightly with how you categorize how elections are won. I know the Carville, statement, it's the economy stupid. I would say that Republicans, conservatives, they win elections on the economy. The Democrats and people on the left, they win their elections on how well they can administer what we call in the military a hearts and minds campaign. So if the economy is good and the Democrats, so if the Democrats have a good hearts and minds campaign, they're formidable, especially right now when the economy, it's not great, it's not good. But I think that really, if the people on the Republican side, on our ticket, my ticket, I'm a conservative. I'm one of those weird Americans that love our great nation. America. if we can get into the having just a better messaging, talk about the hearts and minds. I think that is our in. And frankly, sir, I think that if we fail to do that, if we only do these ad hominem attacks, I think we lose this race, sir.
Yeah, well, you know what? Let's pick up right there. We're going to pause right here. Folks, we're on with Adam Schwarze, former retired Navy SEAL, based in Minnesota. This guy's been in service in 90 countries around the world, and he was in the military for more than 20 years. Adam Schwarze, stick with me. We're going to come right back and talk about this Hearts and Minds campaign because it's something that we were just talking about. And maybe I'll play that Joy clip again to kind of frame the whole situation. Stick with me. We're coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. So check it out. The media is doing a number on the American people. I would say it's reminiscent to a propaganda campaign that the CIA would do overseas. The only difference, it's happening right here in the United States. It's massive programming. And I'm not kidding. We just heard Dan Schneider in the previous hour tell us that they're using brain mapping to go after people's emotions, forget about issues. And our guest right now said the same thing. He said, conservatives win elections based on the economy, but folks on the left are winning it based on hearts and minds. So with that being said, before we come back to our guest, who is a 21-year veteran of the Navy SEALs. He was a Marine infantryman, Adam Schwarze. I want you to listen to this clip of audio where they're driving home the message that the Harris-Walz campaign represents joy.
Thank you for bringing back the joy. She does it all with a sense of joy. Compassionate, careful, joyous leader.
And yesterday, what you saw is joy.
And it was the power of joy.
You know what I love more than anything? The joy. You can't underestimate the power of joy in this campaign. Don't underestimate the joy factor of this. They're going to bring the joy.
People were also just feeling relieved and telling me about how happy they were to see some joy back in the party.
Well, Adam Schwarze, when you hear them pushing joy, 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 and more joy, This is what when you said Hearts and Minds campaign, this is what I thought of. What do you think?
I think you're spot on, and that's how they win their races. They paint everything as the Republicans, the conservatives. We're just doom and gloom. We're alarmists. We're overreacting.
Fear and anger.
That we're only fear and anger. That's all we bring to the table. Whereas they're the ones who are, Walz just was talking for white dudes for Kamala the other day. He's like, no, don't be scared of socialism. That's just being neighborly. Like, what are you talking about now?
Yeah, what is going on
socialism's
here?
a really bad thing. But that's their touch. That's their magic touch. It's never on. It's the Grand New Deal or the big green deal where they're going to arrest cows for farting and they're going to make sure commercial planes stop flying. It's all these crazy ideas in practice and also very expensive. But we don't talk about the numbers. We just talk about how we have a racist Supreme Court and Republicans don't want you to get your free college tuition, and Republicans, they want to keep taxes super low, but only for people with money. There's no execution of their plans. But then when they're in power, and this is where we need to do better at our own messaging. Let's go back to my not friend Tim Walz. When he was in charge of Minnesota, there's $1 billion in fraud, $500 million in unemployed overpayments, $250 million to feeding our children, which is one of the biggest federal COVID jinxes that happened nationally. $250 million. Minnesota took over the #1 worst state for starting of businesses. I mean, you can just Google that. It's an objective thing now. We're ranked as the worst state. And that's because when they actually get power, they put all these, bureaucratic mechanisms that ruin business, stymie business. During COVID, again, under the juxtaposition of, hey, if you don't take the vax, you're actually harming your communities. Governor Walz, and you can't make this up, this is scary. They put in a hotline so people living in Minnesota could call on their neighbors, report them like they're Gestapo, and then police would come and arrest them. That is very scary things that people were wasting so much time talking about how Tim Walz said he carried a gun in Afghanistan, which he probably couldn't find on a map. But we're talking about that versus Tim Walz put in a hotline to have community members have their neighbors arrested for having people over during COVID. It should be a much bigger story that we're not talking about.
Yeah, it's a huge story. And I love the fact that you're kind of blowing the lid off of all this stuff, being from Minnesota. Now, for the people that are listening and they want to hear more from you, other than me inviting you back, how do they track you down?
I'm on all the platforms, brother. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, IG, just Adam Schwarze, SCHWARZE. And I'd be honored to come back, man. I love your show.
Oh, thanks, brother. Same here. I appreciate your service to the country and your plain-spoken manner of telling the truth. I think that's what the listeners want to hear. And you're on the ground in Minnesota. It doesn't get better than that. Folks, Adam Schwarze, check him out online. Make sure you follow him. Give him a follow. Support the cause. And Adam Schwarze, I want to thank you for being with us because, honestly, this is a lot of this. I didn't know about all of his record, and that's getting buried by all of the stolen valor stuff that you mentioned.
Yeah.
The record on I've seen his record on the transsexual stuff and on the tampons and a lot of other stuff like that, social issues. But on the fiscal stuff, I hadn't seen it, so I appreciate that. Godspeed to you, sir.
Yeah, God bless. Have a good night, Rich.
You bet, brother. A real gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. And we'll definitely have Adam Schwarze back. Folks, we're coming right back. We're going to discuss brains, more brains, right? There's this Brainlink technology from Elon Musk. There's a lot of brain news out there, and we're going to get into it with Dr. Patrick Porter straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our discussion tonight on brains, right? We've been talking about brains all night. We were talking about brain mapping earlier and how the people are using brain mapping for political targeting for this upcoming campaign, and just fascinating stuff. And I want to get into the scientific side of it, because there's a bunch of stuff out there that it's caught my eye. And one of those things was a report that I heard on Elon Musk, right? They've now implanted one of those Neuralinks into a second person. But there's more, right? There's a lot more. There's also a report or a study out that shows that music is boosting recovery, language recovery in stroke victims. And I thought, wow, that's fantastic, right? Who knew? I listen to lots of music. And there's other stories that I want to get into as well. Even one that says that one of those weight loss drugs, like the infamous Ozempic, might actually help the brain when it comes to Alzheimer's. So we're going to try and cover as much of this as we can with our guest, Dr. Patrick Porter. But before we do, I want you to hear this report from ABC News on this chip that was developed by Elon Musk.
What could be a game changer for people living with severe physical disabilities. Elon Musk revealing a second patient has been implanted with Neuralink, an experimental brain-computer interface that allows patients to control technology with their mind. Musk is a co-founder of the startup.
I don't want to jinx it, but it seems to have gone extremely well with the second implant. So there's a lot of signal, a lot of electrodes. It's working very well.
Not much is known about the second patient, including when they received the implant, but we do know they suffered a spinal cord injury, just like Nolan Arbaugh.
This is all from there to there. Yeah, man.
Arbaugh was the first Neuralink patient. He opened up to Good Morning America back in May.
I was just very happy that I would be a part of something that I believe is so monumental and this next step forward of helping people with paralysis.
Musk says he believes Neuralink will allow all humans, whether they have physical disabilities or not, to more efficiently interface with the digital world and even compete with artificial intelligence.
If it's extremely safe and you have and you can have superhuman abilities, I think probably a lot of people would choose to have it.
And again, that is Elon Musk at the end there, saying it's extremely safe. I don't know anything about this. It sounds kind of risky, this whole brain stuff. But who better to have this discussion about than the founder of BrainTap, BrainTap.com. And this is something that I really, I'm fascinated by the brain. I think the brain is a fascinating, I don't know if it's an organ or what it is, but it's fascinating nonetheless. Dr. Patrick Porter, welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm here.
My pleasure. So let's talk about this. We hear this report that there's now a second person that has a Neuralink brain chip implanted for a spinal cord injury. And Elon Musk says it's working. Is this something that you're skeptical about or you're enthusiastic about? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think for this, it's fantastic. If you can figure out the electrical impulses of the brain, and we do have neural networks, so they're figuring that out. I think it's going to be great, especially for these patients like they're talking about, the paraplegics. And I think that we're going to have a way to interface to keep up with the changes. No one knows where we're going to be with AI in 20 years. What are we going to be if the magnitude of changes happen over the last few years?
And when you talk about AI, you're talking about how the AI will develop within the research for these products?
Yes. I mean, we can't think fast enough to change the brain. I mean, they haven't even mapped the human brain yet. A lot of people don't even know, really. There's no significant research that tells us even specifically how the brain works. So they're figuring out how to get predictive models and using this chip. I mean, it's in its infancy. So with AI, it's all about computing numbers and frequencies, and you need an intelligence that's what it does. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm for everybody getting chipped and implanted so they can interface
right.
with their social media, but I think that for people who have disabilities, it's like the pacemaker. Now it seems like we're getting like a pacemaker for the brain, and it's all about energy and activation of electrical signals. So it's going to interface with technology at some point.
Fascinating stuff. Now, with the advent of this stuff, there's some people that are saying that this goes too far, that it's too cutting edge, that we're playing God. Your thoughts on that?
Well, they're not going to stop it, but I mean, people will always say that. I mean, it's like anything. You can take
like
a gun and can help. Yeah. I mean, it's like anything out there that can be used for good or bad. I mean, obviously, if it's a sci-fi movie, it's going to turn out bad. But I think we got to look at the possibilities of the positive side of this. and focus on that, because these people are, the people that they're working with right now, we can't help them. So this is a solution for them. And then I think that, just like our technology, people don't think they need it to assist them, but technology is here to stay. Nobody's going to get rid of their cell phones or big screen televisions or GPS now. I mean, so we have to adapt and learn to use it, not get overrun by it, but harness it. And I think the intelligence of the human race is going to increase exponentially as well, because the real computer is the 100 billion neurobit computer in our brain. And so if we start to access that in different ways, we might need technology to kind of jumpstart that process.
Folks, we are on with Dr. Patrick Porter, PhD. He's the founder of BrainTap, BrainTap.com. And Dr. Porter, tell us a little bit about BrainTap. How did you come about the concept for this?
Well, I was with a group actually back in the 80s. It's called Light and Sound Research, and we were looking at how could we downregulate the brain to get people out of pain. And then, and you can, if you get people out of the high stress state and put them into a more relaxation state by monitoring their breathing, respiration, and heart rate, you can actually teach people to get out of pain without medication. And I mean, we've done studies actually in Brazil where we beat opioids in a 4-week study. So, I mean, you can train the brain because the brain is the most powerful pharmacy on earth. But the problem is most people can't do that on their own. So what we started to experiment was we started to notice the science is called frequency following response. So if we want to meditate, we can go out in nature, we can relax. Nature and the ocean, let's say, they have what we call a response potential of 10 hertz. That happens to be alpha. That's where people go for deep relaxation, inspiration, meditation. And it's a healing state of mind. And so when you're there, what we can do is we can use light and sound and vibration to put your brain there. And then we can train the brain for different things. So in this case, when we're talking about like Alzheimer's and Mozart music and things like that,
right,
it's the same principle. When you think about Mozart's music, it's called 10-cycle music. When your brain hears it, it synchronizes. For those that want to research this a little bit farther, there's a really cool metronome video on YouTube. If you put in metronome, you'll see where there's hundreds of these videos. They'll start 200 to 300 metronomes all at different times, and within 3 minutes, all the metronomes are syncing.
Wow.
And it's a principle of synchronization. So if we can expose the eyes, the ears, and the body to the same frequencies, the same light, the same sound, as if you were in nature, your body will resonate, and then the memories of that experience will happen. The brain will change states, and neuroplasticity will happen. What happens in the music part of it is music is converted into light energy in the body. It's electrical energy. It's just converted when it gets into the body, and that electrical energy is absorbed by something called mitochondria. These are energy cells in the body, and every cell has something called a chromophore, like a battery. Now, as we age or we have damage to the brain, that gets compromised. But when you listen to this music and the body starts vibrating at a certain frequency, like alpha and theta, the body will create something called neuroplasticity, which means the body will actually generate its own energy.
Wow.
And that's what heals
Doc,
the brain.
I want you to pause, if you can, just a moment, because I want to take our time with the music, and we've got to take a commercial break here. But, folks, we're on with Dr. Patrick Porter, founder of BrainTap.com. And when we come back, we're going to continue right on where we're leaving off, how classical music boosts language recovery and brain connectivity in stroke survivors. I think this is fascinating because I'm a big lover of music. So stick with us. We're coming right back with Dr. Patrick Porter.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Congratulations on just an amazing show.
I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
1, 2, 3, 4, and 1.
For a library, there seems to be a lot of commotion. For 87-year-old Marie Garcia, this is exactly what she needed.
I'm stuck at home and kind of bored sometimes.
2 months ago, Garcia suffered a fall and hasn't been her active self. Recently, she was invited to participate in a pilot program at UC Irvine Health called Strokestra.
Music makes the world a better place, and that's the principle of Strokestra.
For more than a decade, musicians from London's Royal Philharmonic Orchestra have led these interactive rehabilitation workshops. The goal, use music to help stroke and other patients recover.
It's so encouraging for us to see even tiny little improvements. So maybe someone can suddenly stretch a little further than they could before.
Dr. Lisa Gibbs says in the UK, music therapy is much more commonplace. But in the US, it's a much newer field of study.
We really need very concrete evidence. We need randomized control trials. We need the kind of scientific rigor that we apply to other things.
A unique realm where art meets science with benefits you can feel. I'm Rena Nakano, KCAL News.
So, classical music boosts language recovery and brain connectivity in stroke survivors. And again, it makes sense to me. I mean, I think classical music and lots of different music has a lot of positive effects on people. But this one is fascinating to see how it's really playing out. So I want to get some reaction to this from our guest, Dr. Patrick Porter. He is founder of BrainTap. Check them out at braintap.com. And Dr. Porter, before we took the pause, you were telling us a little bit about how neuroplasticity plays a role in this, and we got into the topic of music therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you think about classical music, your brain is actually listening to every note on every instrument. So when you think about the classical music, your brain is making an orchestra in the brain. So it's not just happening in one region of the brain. So in order for the brain to get the full experience, it's going to open up energy centers in the brain. And it happens because our brain loves basically rhythm and cadence. And for some reason, they have found, they call it actually the Mozart effect. There's been a lot of research. I don't know what that last quote was on the radio there, but we're talking about thousands of research studies that show just listening to Baroque classical music while you study, you are smarter. They've done it in classrooms. Now, it might be a new study for them to show how it helps the dementia patients, but we've seen how it helps if we want to boost somebody's cognition on a score, and maybe they were on the dementia scale, you play that music in the background, the brain will literally synchronize. It will organize the information in your brain. The recall system will happen because it's bringing energy to the brain. So think in terms of it's all about energy and getting the body to function. Now, the difference between that music and like listening to Metallica is the rhythm and cadence. The Metallica music is going to be good to get your body moving, like to do exercise or do something, but it's not really going to have the same effect as like classical Baroque music would, or some maybe even easy kind of listening music that doesn't have the drum that's chaotic, but has a rhythm to it. There's a lot of chants and mantras people use that turn on. What it's really doing is it's turning on a part of the body called the vagus nerve. So when the brain synchronizes, this nerve, which handles recovery in the body, really, when it downregulates the stress in the system, and then the body can heal. But when you have, let's say you've had a concussion, a traumatic brain injury, you've had a stroke, whatever, you're stressing, and that stress is actually working against your brain. It's not working for your brain. Stress won't help it. We've got to relax and let the brain operate. There's some exercise I do with people when we lead our seminars where we show that once you stress out the body, one half of your brain literally shuts down. So let's say you've had a stroke. Now you've got to get that whole brain operating again together. That's where the music comes in.
All right, so follow-up question. Is what you're talking about stressed brain syndrome, or is this something different?
That is included in it. That's something different, but it's the same. I mean, that's just a term they use. You don't have to have a traumatic brain injury or dementia to have that. It could just be that your brain is just because think of what happens when you clench your fist. you're restricting blood flow and circulation to your hands. And then you let that go, you'll feel the tingling because the blood rushes back through the veins and arteries and things. Well, in the brain, when it restricts like that, because you're stressed, that's what they're talking about, the blood flow and circulation, that's when you start getting the headaches, the toxic problems in the brain, the foggy brain, and then that just leads to a series of other activities. So we really need to work on the brain, get energy into the brain, not just doing math problems and things like that. The reason music works so well is it's something called entrainment. The brain learns the rhythm and cadence. We call it brainwave entrainment. So you can use music to do it. You can use, there's a series of sounds called isochronic tones and binaural beats. And the music that we're talking about here is literally programmed, whether on purpose or just by accident, but of that time was what we call 10-cycle rhythm music. So the brain just follows it, and at that cycle, the brain is in a healing state, and it's also in a state what's called hypermnesia, supermemory.
Wow. Dr. Porter, I want you to stick with me if you can, just a couple of more minutes. I wanted to ask you one final question. I want to make sure everybody knows how to find you and how to take advantage of the stuff that you guys put out at BrainTap. So stick with us, folks. We're coming right back with Dr. Patrick Porter.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, familia, welcome back. And we continue our conversation and wrap up on this theme of the brain. And on Tuesday, there was a presentation of some new research presented at the Alzheimer's Association conference, an international conference that they hosted in Philadelphia. And what they found was that a weight loss drug, similar to the popular one known as Ozempic, which is classified as a GLP-1 agonist, semaglutide, appeared to slow the cognitive decline in patients with mild Alzheimer's disease. This is a big deal because the findings have not been published in any peer-reviewed journal as of yet, but they show that there's growing evidence that these GLP-1 agonists actually may protect the brain. I found this to be fascinating because people will swear by them. They're saying they help with people who have gambling addictions, eating addictions, all sorts of things. Our guest, Dr. Patrick Porter, is the founder of BrainTap.com. And Dr. Porter, what's your reaction to this?
Well, I think it makes sense because sugar is so bad on the brain and so toxic. If the drug is stopping that receptor, they do say that like dementia and Alzheimer is like type 3 diabetes. Mm-hmm. So think about it like that. So if it does doing that, I think it does need more research, as they actually said in the article, because what are the side effects of that? Because we don't want to take, if it's affecting the fat, the brain is mostly made of fat and water. So right. We don't want to affect that. So, but I think that I'm sure they're going to figure something out to slow down that process because, we're getting Alzheimer's actually in 30-year-old people now. So there's something going on with the diet and maybe the high sugar intake that people have.
Maybe they need more BrainTap. Let everybody know how they can learn more about your product.
Yeah, well, they can, if they like some videos or some tips, we have them on the YouTube site. That's at Dr. Patrick Porter, or they can go to BrainTap.com and read all about it.
Fantastic. Doc, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. We'll have you back soon. Folks, we continue your conversation with Open Phone America. That's coming up right now. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't move a muscle. It's me, Rich Valdez. We're coming back with Open Phone America. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program. And if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, feel free. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And this is the third and final hour of the program, known as Open Phone America, where we talk with all of our listeners. And again, I feel like there haven't been as many callers during the guest interviews. And I know sometimes you get really into the guests in hour one and hour two, but you're still able to call in as long as it's something that the guest can actually answer. Sometimes we have calls that are off the beaten path. Those have to kind of stay in hour number three because they can't answer certain questions that there is not within their expertise. But I just wanted to make that reminder because I enjoy it when and so do the guests. The guests do enjoy speaking with the callers. It's not something they get to do on other radio programs that we do allow them to do here. So it's kind of a treat. Anyway, I want to speak with all of you, the American people. I love talking with our callers in New York and California and all over. We're fortunate to be on in a lot of great states and with a lot of great people. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you. And I see there's a number of you online already. San Francisco, California, Idaho, Montana, Pendleton, Oregon, Salem, Arkansas, and more, with a few lines ringing right now. So we're going to get to those in a second. It's been a while since I have really focused on news other than the barrage of political news that's been coming in. And I know that's a critique that I get from people that have listened to this program for a long time. They say things like, I used to listen to this show when Larry King was there, and then when Bohannon took over for him, and I have to tell you, I'm so disappointed in this guy Valdez. I hear that, believe it or not. Some people don't like. One guy said to me, "It's like you don't know a word other than Trump," and I couldn't help but laugh. I thought that was pretty funny. The reality is, I am a political animal. I did work in government, and this is the cloth that I'm cut from. But I do enjoy the occasional story about $1 million worth of cocaine washing up on a Florida beach, like anybody else. As a matter of fact, I was at lunch today with a couple of my buddies, and this is what came up because social media has everything, right? Everything. We were talking about, hey, did you see that video of the guy who goes in to swim, and this big box hits him? It's floating by, and it hits him, and it's heavy. You could tell because it kind of moves him over a little bit. He pushes it out of the way, and then he looks at it, and he's like, what is it? It's wrapped in a garbage bag. The bag comes off. It's like a big white cellophane-wrapped block the size of like a tabletop. And two guys in white polo shirts come, take it out of the water, and each of them holding a side of it, they take it, and they whatever. And apparently it's $1 million worth of cocaine that washed up on a Florida beach after the storm. So I guess there was a little smuggling going on, and maybe because of the storm, the Hurricane Debbie or whatever, maybe something capsized and they might have lost some of the product, and it just ended up on the beach. I mean, it's the stuff movies are made of. Really, really crazy stuff. But we were talking about that, and I'm thinking, if that happened to me, I would think that it's something, like a dead body, drugs, and I wouldn't want to touch it because I'd be like, what if it's that Chinese stuff, and it's fentanyl and it kills you? I would be kind of paranoid. I'm just that guy. So, I don't even like going in the beach water to begin with. I don't like jellyfish. I don't like any of that. I like hanging out in the sand and getting a tan. But anyway, all that being said, I want to get into some of the stories that are going on tonight, and that's one of them. And by the way, the U.S. Border Patrol said that a Good Samaritan found the packages containing 32 kilograms or 79 pounds of cocaine. That's nuts. Good Samaritan, good for you. It's approximately worth $1 million on the street. Wow. Let me see. What else do we have here? There was another story I wanted to get to. just to give us a reprieve as we get into Friday tomorrow. And, oh, here it is. Listen to this. This is a little dark, but listen to this. Chess player suspended after allegedly poisoning her rival. What? How does that even happen? Well, here's the story. A chess player has been suspended by the Russian Chess Federation and is reportedly facing time in jail after she allegedly tried to poison her rival at the chessboard during a tournament. Her name, Amina Abrakova. She's 40 years old, and she's a chess coach from Maklashaklia. I'm saying that wrong. Maklashaklia in the Russian Republic of Dagestan. Dagestan? I'm definitely messing this up. I'm sorry, I'm not very cultured on the Eastern European countries. And it's she is accused of trying to poison her rival, 30-year-old Umeyganat Osmanova. Wow. Osmanova. Wow. Take 3. Anyway, the incident unfolded during the Dagestan Chess Championship last week, according to a Telegram channel that first reported the story. And it's now making headlines in state-run Russian news outlets as well as the global media. Imagine that. So it's not just Joe Biden that went after El Trompito using lawfare and que mala eres, having his back on that. But you've got chess players that are looking to get their rivals as well. Very interesting stuff going on. Now, of course, again, the number 833-4-VALDEZ if you want to join us. I want to get into some of the audio. I got some really good audio for you tonight, too, on political topics. But I wanted to just share those couple of stories with you because I thought they were really interesting. And, again, one of the stories that we talked about last hour that I want to just remind you, Trump has agreed to 3 debates with Kamala Harris in September. ABC News, NBC News, and Fox. And the Harris campaign had to tweak the biography of Governor Tim Walz. Why? Because he keeps getting in trouble. And they keep saying that he's stealing valor. So the update came a day after Republicans escalated attacks on his record. And when you talk about almost everybody on my timeline was putting pictures of them in service wherever they served in this country, in the military, saying, here's a picture of me not being Tim Walz. Which I thought that's got to stink to be him at that moment. But I guess it comes with the territory. Que Mala Eres and her campaign updated the online biography of running mate Tim Walz and his military service record amid Republican efforts to question his record in the Army National Guard. On the website of the Harris campaign, they got rid of a reference to Walz as a retired command sergeant major and now says that he once served at the command sergeant major rank, a small change that nonetheless reflects his true rank at retirement from the Army National Guard. That's good because that was a big issue. And it wasn't Republicans. They're trying to, in the story on Politico.com, they're trying to say it's Republicans. No, it was the Command Master Sergeants Consortium. It was the group of those guys that said, no, sir, you didn't do this right. He got promoted contingent upon some stuff, went back on what he'd agreed on, so he went back in his grade. And I think that's fair, I guess. That's how it works when you cut a deal like that. And J.D. Vance really took him to task on that, who's also a Marine Corps veteran who deployed to Iraq. So anyway, that's that one. Let me see if there's one more I wanted to talk about here before I go to other stuff. Some momentum for the Harris campaign on certain polls, which I'm skeptical of, honestly. Not because it doesn't favor my preferred outcome, but because I don't think it's that significant yet. I think you show me a poll in about a week from now, and now we can look. And we'll do another one 2 weeks from now, maybe right around Labor Day or right after Labor Day. And then we're looking. And we'll see, did this little newly enthused wave of energy for Harris, was it a flash in the pan? Was it a bubble that bursted? Or is it the real deal? Are Democrats really desperate for a great candidate, and now they feel they have one in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz? I just don't see that. But again, I'm biased, and what do I know? Anyway, I want to get to your calls and everything else on that stuff and more. So stick with me. We're going to take a pause right here. We're going to come right back. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
Are you confident that there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025?
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all. I mean, if Trump loses, I'm not confident at all. He means what he says. We don't take him seriously. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath.
That, of course, is Joe El Baboso Biden. Remember him? He's actually the sitting president of the United States. And you would think that we didn't have a president because she's always out there, que mala eres, with her buddy Walz. And he says he's concerned about a peaceful transition of power. Now, of course he's going to say that. But just imagine if the shoe were on the other foot, right? And listen, we're all guilty of being... a little bit passionate about our disdain for the other side. But I've never heard Trump say anything like that, right? That, that there would be some sort of civil war, some sort of harm, physical harm that's brought if Biden were elected. He says he's destroying the country. Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. It's good. It's used figuratively. It's not, an actual pronouncement of anything, like Biden saying he doesn't believe there'll be a peaceful transition of power. Why wouldn't you believe that? If he's already won and lost, and you have a record of both. That's the part that kills me. It really does. They make it seem as if in 2020, where he believed he was robbed of the election, I tend to believe that too, and he still got an Air Force Marine One, and he moved to Mar-a-Lago. Walked right out the front door of the White House, and he left. I saw it on TV. So then what gives? Why? Anyway, let's get to your calls and thoughts on these things. Let's see. Where do we go? Let me see here. Classical music. Yeah, that was a good conversation. Let's go to Tampa, Florida, and check in with Eduardo. Eduardo, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Thank you very much. The killings over there, protests over there with the Taylor fans, Taylor Swift fans.
Oh, in Austria?
I think it's very important. What's that?
In Austria? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, they canceled that concert, but they had the slayings of those three girls in the UK over there in England. Yeah, and I think this is important because they obviously had a terrorist where they killed 22 people a couple of years ago in Manchester. And immigration is very important, not just here in the U.S., but over there, too. It's hurt the economies all over, especially after COVID. Over here, water train, Agua de Tren from Venezuela, they're setting up camp in El Paso, Texas. So this is something that the Harris-Walz campaign is not going to talk about. I mean, they're going to be talking about suntans and personalities, because that is their stick over there on the other side with the media's help, unfortunately. They're not going to be talking about this. Or the fact that the missile hit a American base over there in Iraq. They're not going to be talking about stuff like that. Yeah, it has to be something about race or personality. And the media is,
Yeah, they're guilty as sin. And, that's what we talked about tonight. We talked about that with Dan Schneider earlier. If anybody missed that, make sure you check that out on the podcast later on. The replay of the show is absolutely free. Go to richvaldez.com and figure out how to do it from there. You could stream it from the website for free, or you could check it out on YouTube, or you can check it out through your podcast app. But, Eduardo, you're right. We talked about this earlier when two of our guests were talking about how they manipulate brains in order to and track these brains and study the brain in order to figure out what type of messaging to provide. And our other guest said that this is really just a campaign for the hearts and minds. And I think he's right. It's devoid of policy positions. It's just about feelings. And that's where we are. And when you talk about the UK, they've taken it a step further where they will arrest you if they don't like what you're saying. I mean, they've taken wokeness to a brand new level. Eduardo, I want you to listen to this clip. Check this out.
So we'll throw the full force of the law at offenders, whether that's charging people with assaults, violent disorder, riot, and if terrorism offences are appropriate, I know the Director of Public Prosecutions has said he's prepared to consider that. We will throw the full force of the law at people. And whether you're in this country committing crimes on the streets or committing crimes from further afield online, we will come after you.
That's Thomas Rowley. He is the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police in England. And he's saying for your thoughts, right? If they don't like what you tweet, if they don't like what you put on Facebook, if they don't like what you put on Instagram, their arrests will follow. You heard him say it. This is mind-blowing stuff. That's where we are. So when we talk about riots and all of this stuff and bombings, well, yeah, of course, because look at how they treat people, number one. And number two, you're right, immigration's been unchecked and they're not protecting their borders. So it's a recipe for disaster. Eduardo, thanks for the call. Excellent points, by the way. You really touched on something that's very important, and I appreciate it. And let's see, not enough time. I'll be cutting it too short if we go to another call right now. But staying on that topic just for a second of censorship and people trying to survive, that's where we are. And if we don't make the right choice come November, that's where we stay, right? It only gets worse from there. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. Anyway, folks, your calls and more coming up straight ahead. Let me see. 833-482-5337 is the number, 833-4-VALDEZ. And we've got our buddy David in San Francisco is on the line. We'll get to you in a moment. And we got Joe in Salem, Arkansas, Monica in Pendleton, Frank in Evergreen, Paul in Boise, and another one that's flashing right now. So good about 7 or 8 people online. We're going to get to you momentarily. There's 2 lines open if anybody else wants to join the conversation. And from here, I want to pivot to this violent Venezuelan gang, El Tren de Aragua, TDA, and what they're doing. I just saw a video of them breaking down a door, of women cowering behind a door, afraid of this gang, and they went in there, and they're doing home invasions in California. So watch out for the home invasions. Folks, we're coming right back. The music means I got to go, but I'm coming right back. I promise. It's Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Coast to coast, Tren de Aragua, or TDA, was born out of Venezuela in a prison and has been linked to crime like this jewelry store heist in Colorado. News Nation obtaining a memo warning law enforcement that an estimated 1,000 TDA members have been given the green light to attack officers. News Nation's Alicia Nieves joins us now live from New York, where these gang members have actually shot at police. Alicia, how widespread is this gang?
Yeah, Anna, good morning. This is a violent Venezuelan gang. It's infiltrated U.S. cities across the country from coast to coast, becoming more brazen and organized, according to authorities. In just the last 2 months, we have had at least 3 major incidents on the West Coast and here back on the East Coast. Just this past week, as a matter of fact, authorities have linked a member of Tren de Aragua's gang members to a violent June jewelry heist in Denver. In nearby Aurora, Colorado, the gang is accused of taking control of a local apartment complex, using it as headquarters of their operation. And the footage you're seeing in a second here actually shows what lawyers representing several apartment complexes say is the gang seizing control of these apartment complexes, leading to gang violence and numerous code violations. Now, throughout the country, police departments, as you noted a moment ago, warned that the gang leaders have given members in the U.S. the green light to shoot officers. And unfortunately, that memo coming after an incident happened already here in New York City in June. As you said a moment ago, 2 NYPD officers were shot by a man living out of a migrant shelter. That man, Bernardo Raul Castro Mata, after his arrest, actually identified himself as a member of Tren de Aragua and allegedly told police that he crossed the U.S. border, came to New York, and when he got to the shelter in the city, the 19-year-old was recruited by the gang to commit robberies and even given a gun. Now, Castro Mata also told investigators that gang leaders actually have been instructing a lot of their members here in the U.S., especially here in New York City, to bring guns into shelters, and they're able to do so relatively easily by utilizing food delivery services because food is not scanned through the security system at these shelters. So this is obviously a growing concern, not only here in New York City, but again, across the country from the West Coast to the East Coast. We do know federal agencies are on this and trying to work with local officials to curb this growing gang activity.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like.
So there have been home invasions in California due to this gang, and it's crazy. Now, the Venezuelan gang has been giving their own members the green light to shoot U.S. cops, and this is according to a memo from the Department of Homeland Security. Right? So, I mean, you're talking about this what we just talked about, the jewelry heist in Denver. And if you watch this, these women are working in the store, and when these guys come in to rob the jewelry store, they run into an office in the back, and they don't get to lock the door in time. And they're, cowering behind desks, trying to take cover. And the bad guys get in, and thankfully, I mean, looks like they don't really bother them much. I mean, one guy grabs her, and these guys are armed and whatever. But it wasn't like they were trying to physically harm them in any way. They were just trying to rob them and get out of there, which makes it, I guess, somewhat better. But a horrible sight to watch, honestly, and I'm sure nothing that any of us wants to experience firsthand. But shocking that we're having this situation, shocking that our borders are, Kamala Harris hasn't said anything about this, shocking that this is happening in America in 2024. And we have gangs from Venezuela where they're emptying out their jails to come here and wreak havoc, despite the warnings that we've had from those in the media, those on the radio, those on TV. We've had people, right? People have said that this is a bad gang, and we had Trump. They're bad hombres. He told us, but yet nobody took heed to the warning, just like so many other things that are happening. Anyway, let us go to your calls. I want to go to, let's see, where did I leave off? I want to leave off with, let's go to David in San Francisco, California, streaming the show, richvaldez.com. David always likes to disagree with us. David, go right ahead.
All right, Rich. I wanted to talk about the importance of voting. And before I did, though, a couple of episodes ago, you were talking about the woman, the chess player in Russia.
Yes.
It reminded me of one of the dangers of sports. Are you're probably aware of there was a crooked Supreme Court ruling about short of 10 years ago where they said that interstate gambling is now legal. And so that set it up so that people can now gamble on games. Say, for example, if you're in Texas, they're big into high school baseball, high school football, all sorts of gambling all through the South on games. And you remember there's an old problem where if somebody is bet on a game, they'll target a kid, a good player, and injure him just to get him out of the game. So some of these kids may not even be 18 years old, and somebody will go out of their way to hurt them for life, ruin their knees, ruin their back, ruin their arms, just to make sure they win a bet on a game, interstate gambling. So I'm wondering about that chess game. I know that people gamble on chess. And,
That's good to know. Yeah, I don't know. They're playing chess in Russia, or as Trump would say, Russia, Russia, Russia. So I really don't know. I know they take that very seriously over there, and good for them that they do. But, yeah, interesting point. Are they doing that just to take out their competition? Were they doing it out of pure malice? Was it a combination thereof? Very good questions, and I'm going to have to refer those to our producers in the control room, to do some fact checking. Now, tell me what you wanted to say about the election.
Well, I've noticed an article that came up in the New Republic just about a week ago. Elon Musk's insidious new strategy to help Trump win. And basically, Elon Musk has got a PAC, a Political Action Committee. It's called America PAC. And if you go to it, you can register to vote. And if you're in about 45 of the 50 states, it works just fine. But if you're in the swing states, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, I believe Wisconsin, Arizona, you fill out the form as if you're going to register to vote, but it doesn't happen. So the people of those states that are trying to register, they think they're registered, but Elon Musk's software doesn't allow them because he wants to throw that the voting registration so that it'll help Trump. And he's doing phishing as well. So if you get a nonprofit, you know, a person can help start a charity, a nonprofit, and help somebody not pay taxes, give the money to the nonprofit, and that nonprofit doesn't do any good. It actually goes out of its way to do harm. That's not a service to America that deserves a nonprofit status. So
you're right. And you know who did that in the last election was, I guess, a colleague of his, we could say. I don't think they're friends, but they're in the same business. Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg funded $400 million for several groups that were, you know, social impact type of things, nonprofits, designed to inform voters. And in fact, what they did was they didn't inform voters. They just kind of bought and created these drop boxes that were not initially sanctioned by the government and then sort of were. And it was a very convoluted thing, and we'd never seen that before. And they were only placed in areas where the registration was like almost 90% Democrat, which was interesting. So, yeah, I think there are limits on one's speech, political speech, and whether you're the CEO of a company or Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, ultimately these people have rights. And Citizens United says that, you know, the more money you spend, the more free speech you have, in essence, right, is what they said. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that ruling, but I think that is the ruling, that your money is your speech. And that being said, I think we're going to continue to see people that are going to take advantage of that because that's currently the law of the land. David in San Francisco, California, streaming the show. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Good to hear from you. And let's see, I take a quick pause here. We come back, your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You know, I'm not a Republican, but I listen to you because you speak moderately and reasonably and softly and decently, and I really appreciate that.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with you, the American people. Let's go to Salem, Arkansas, KSAR, and check in with our buddy Joe. Joe, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Yeah, Rich, 3 points. I'll make them fast.
Sure.
Number one, you had a caller from listening to WLS. I've never heard one listening to WLS before.
We're new. We're new on WLS. We used to be on a different station in Chicago, but we were on tape delay. So when this show ended at 1 a.m. Eastern time, they would start playing us until 4 a.m. But we were able to get the live slot in WLS where we could actually get Chicago callers to call in. So that's why you're hearing more of them.
Okay, there's a little more delay on that than there is on our KSAR. But I'm going to tell you something. My terrestrial problem is solved. Down here, 500 miles away, I'm getting it like gangbusters.
Nice.
Your show.
Excellent.
And that's what I'm listening to in my crew cab Ford. I can't get it in the RV, but crew cab Fords, boy, they got good radios. And I mean, I listened to I went ahead and Cardinals was over with probably 10-something. But the Fanatics can have that, and I'm going to do this when they're having the ball games, and I won't miss so much.
Outstanding.
Second thing I was going to say was, I'm going to throw this in there about the Citizens United. Now, John Roberts, I don't know why he does what he does, but he ought to know enough constitutional background. Maybe he needs to learn something from Mark Levin. That was designed, the 10 amendments with the freedom of speech starting out, that was for organic preamble citizens, not for fictional corporations. And I'm not against Elon Musk. I think he's using the tools that he's got, and he's doing some good. But corporate speech, John Roberts, he said, money talks, so that's speech. Well, he's wrong there.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree with it either. And I've had this talk with David Bossie in the past, and it's a tough one. Without it, we're kind of screwed. I think with it gives us some ability. So the jury's out for me, honestly. I think I could do either way, but I get it.
Okay, I argue with my brother in Michigan all the time about that. But I think he's coming around. He says, that's why we got corruption through George Soros corporations and BlackRock, and they even call it dark money, don't they, for BlackRock.
Yeah.
So anyway, down to my third thing on the, I wish I'd have called in and asked your guest about the classical music. I'm into classic rock and classic country. And I've tried the classical to get my brain going, Beethoven and Bach and stuff. But I want to tell you something. I got a dairy farmer next door, and I'm in his dairy barn up there one day getting a gallon of milk, and he's playing Bach and Beethoven and all that. He says, my cows give 20% more milk. I've tried other kinds of music. And and there's more dairy farmers catching on and doing that. It does something to them, and boy, they just put out the milk. Wow. I wonder if he'd ever heard of that.
I'd never heard of that. That's a good one. I was also going to ask him about other types of music because I feel like depending on what kind of brain you're dealing with, right, it could matter. Like I tend to like music that's faster paced, just as I have ADHD and my brain moves really fast. So I'm thinking, maybe that's why I find it comforting if it's just, moderately fast music. Who knows? But Joe in Salem, Arkansas, all good points. Thanks for the call, brother. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for tuning in always faithfully. I appreciate it. Let us continue. Oh, I was going to go to a girl named Monica, but she's not there now. All right, we will continue. We'll go to Bill, our resident historian, calling us from Rolla, Missouri, right? KTTR. Bill, welcome back, sir.
Yeah, I'm actually in Jefferson City, Missouri, but a friend of mine pointed out that he was at the 1968 Chicago Convention. A lot of similarities to what's going on in 2024. So he said, be aware of it, and he reminded me of a Mark Twain history quote. He said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Now, I interpret that as meaning there's going to be a lot of fruit salad and changes in vice presidents, just like Harry Truman in 1948, Hubert Humphrey that fell in a 68 convention. And so anyway, that's my thought real quickly. I enjoyed your WLS concert statement and your caller from Arkansas, and I'm a fan of WLS. So for years,
yeah, they're great station, absolutely. Happy to be on with them, and really is an honor. And Bill, I did not know some of what you're telling me. Like I usually don't, right? When you start bringing me stuff from 1968 and 1948, it's always great food for thought and stuff for me to research and learn a little bit about. And I always appreciate it. Bill, our resident historian, calling us from Jefferson City, Missouri. KTTR, always a pleasure, my brother. Thank you so much. Godspeed to you. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more in the speed round. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, we're going to Linda, Albany, New York, WGDJ. Go right ahead quickly. Speed round.
Yes, about the guy, the experiment that was done on the cows reminded me of a teacher who did an experiment. She had 3 different containers, plants in them, the same kind of plants, and watered them the same. But then she was piping different kind of music into each container. And the container that classical music was piped into, those plants all did the best as far as growing and surviving.
Wow. That's, it's amazing what an effect classical music has on things. I'm glad we play a little bit of it, or at least, some softer music here. That might be why we have such great callers on this show. Linda, big shout out to everybody in Albany, New York, WGDJ. Thank you, Linda. Let us continue. Let us go to Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBFI. Paul, go right ahead.
Thanks, Rich.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
I like Trump today. I like him in an hour form a little bit better than that 2-hour rally deal. I'm not going to criticize him. That's just me. That's my personal preference. Yeah. Not that I can't take him for 2 hours, but I'd like to see him condense it a little bit and no repetition. I think he's going to get more people involved. But I really like today what he did during that was he talked about no taxes for people on Social Security. I thought that was a brilliant move on his part and with the vice president as well. I think that was a brilliant move.
Totally brilliant move. I think you're 100% right. That and the no tax on tips. And ultimately, I think he's moving towards proposing an end to the income tax, which I think is great. He's going to solidify his legacy that way. Paul in Boise, thank you for your call, my brother. Let's go to Frank, Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Frank, go right ahead. 40 seconds.
Hi, Rich. The word for today is joy. And that's the key word for the mandated joy car, the joy rides, the joystick. It'll go forward, backwards, left and right, just like a bumper car. And it'll probably go about 5 miles an hour. And it's going to be only drivable on the progressive side of the street where everyone's riding around with shopping carts.
Shopping carts. You know what? There's my next tattoo is going to be of a Bible verse, Philippians 4:4. Choose joy. Frank, Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Thank you, sir. Godspeed to you, brother. I appreciate you. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.